Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. I am delighted to welcome you to the session on the UNICEF session where we will be presenting a WASH evaluation. Why this session is important? As you all know, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development has one of the key goals of the Sustainable Development Agenda is SDG 6, which is clean water and sanitation. The justification for such an important goal is that worldwide, 1 in 3 people do not have access to safe drinking water, and that 2 out of 5 people do not have a basic hand washing facility with soap and water, and more than 673 million people still practice open defecation. This situation was already complex and problematic, but it became even more critical when the pandemic emerged, and it continues being critical. For UNICEF, WASH is one of its key areas of intervention. The Convention of the Rights of the Child indicates that all children have the right to clean water and basic sanitation. The ultimate aim of UNICEF's work in water, sanitation, and hygiene, WASH in short, is to ensure that all children fulfill this right and that no children is left behind. In order to accomplish this aim, UNICEF has WASH interventions throughout the world. In this session, we are going to present the formative evaluation of the UNICEF WASH regional and country programming strategies in the East Asia Pacific Islands region between 2014 and 2017-2018. The presenters, we have 2 hands-on presenters today. Mr. Riccardo Polastro, he is the Regional Evaluation Advisor of the Latin American and Caribbean Regional Office, but he recently moved. Prior to this, he was the Regional Evaluation Advisor for Asia and the Pacific, and this explains why he's presenting this evaluation today. And the second presenter is Mr. Evariste Kouassi Komlan, who is the Regional Advisor for WASH in the East Asia and the Pacific Regional Office, EAPRO. We welcome you both, Riccardo and Evariste. Thanks for presenting, sharing with us and with the wider public this interesting experience. Both Riccardo and Evariste will explain the context of the situation of WASH in the region, will walk us through the evaluation, including its purpose, objectives, methodology, and also the findings, recommendations, and lessons emerging from this very important strategic evaluation that has had as well greater influence in UNICEF's strategies for WASH in the region and overall. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Riccardo Polastro, who will start the presentation. After Riccardo's presentation, we'll have a short Q&A, and then we will have Evariste coming for the second part of the presentation, and we will have a final Q&A after Evariste's presentation. Without further ado, Riccardo, thanks very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Ada, and good morning, Asia, good morning, Europe, and good evening to our colleagues in the Americas. So today is a special day, so it's coming back to this formative evaluation of UNICEF WASH regional country program strategies that we finalized last year. It's a very comprehensive evaluation, the first of its kind, because it looks at how a global strategy translates into our region and country program strategies. So it's a bit how do policies become operational. So next slide, please. So the objective of this session is that you'll learn as participants, the value and relevance of WASH across East Asia and the Pacific, and how UNICEF programming upstream work and developing modalities to deliver change and meet WASH-related indicators under SDG 6.1 and 6.2, and why partnership approaches are so crucial to bolster pilot to scale interventions. So it's really good that we're today hosted by the Asian Evaluation Week and presenting here, because we can show the role of evaluation in providing strategic direction as one of the core topics of the Asian Evaluation Week this year. Next, please. So basically, the key lessons of this strategic evaluation. The key lessons of the strategic evaluation shows that UNICEF presence and contribution in the WASH sector is highly valued and relevant across a diverse region, and programming towards more upstream work is adapting, as I was telling you. The evaluation purpose fundamentally was to inform future WASH strategies at the country office level. The scope was to assess WASH regional and country program strategies in East Asia and the Pacific from 2014 to 2017. And as you've seen in the title, there's a little slash there of 18 because we originally envisaged this period. Then the evaluation went on for longer than anticipated, and we added another year inside the scope. And we focused on relevance, effectiveness, and sustainability. The approach was a synthesis and analysis of the different programming strategies that we have across 12 countries in the region, and we used a mixed method approach. It was combined with a theory-based one too. The data was primarily from secondary data analysis of UNICEF documentation, semi-structured interviews, and an online surveys, as well as 3 country visits. There was a pilot in China, but then was complemented by visits to Cambodia and Indonesia. Next, please. So basically the next, please. The findings and the conclusions are articulated around 3 core criteria. First of all, relevance. And in relevance, what we found that is UNICEF strategies are seen to be very well aligned to the local concepts and national government strategies. It's an organization that is present in the region, since the last 70 years. So there's a trust, there's a relationship, and it's not just inside the emergency interventions, but it's across the full spectrum of development interventions. The country strategies align also relatively well with the UNICEF global strategy that was introduced back in 2015. This strategy then translated also according to the development of our new country program strategies. So when you had a new country program, the alignment was stronger. When these country programs were older or pre-2015, they were a little bit weaker. And it's seen also effectively as working in humanitarian and emergency settings, but also a stronger presence in sanitation than in water and hygiene. UNICEF is partially aligned to the SDG agenda. So there are some components, as mentioned above, where UNICEF has very strong roots and others that are still being developed and worked in partnership. In terms of effectiveness, there's no clear validated operational models or modalities of scaling up. Some colleagues use this funny expression inside UNICEF. Sometimes they tell that there are more pilots in UNICEF than in to scale than in the whole Lufthansa, which has a lot of pilots too as a company. The thing is that these are tested programmatically models that are not always achieving and are not always using all the components to pilot to scale, but those that do achieve sustainable SDG level change. And we had a few examples in the evaluation on those. However, in some countries, there wasn't all this modality wasn't implemented throughout. Community-based interventions, particularly CATS and CLTS, are seen as the most effective UNICEF WASH interventions in the region. These kind of interventions are traditional interventions which are community-based and have very big value for our partners, especially in low and middle income countries. The regional office support is most valued when it focuses on providing access to timely, high quality and technical advice and training. And this is one of the core functions of a regional office in UNICEF, which supports its country offices. Next, please. So as you can see from the map over there, which focuses on sustainability, equity, and scalability, you see there are different values given there according to the different countries that we have in the region. But overall, there's limited evidence that UNICEF's WASH work in the region is sustainable. There are a lot of interventions that have been done. The sustainability framework or the capacity of UNICEF to say there's no more need of such intervention and we can continue going along that path is not always straightforward. There's always, in a multiplicity of countries and a multiplicity of WASH subsectors, a high dependency on UNICEF support still. Evidence suggests that UNICEF's strongest partnerships are with local and national governments, and partnerships with NGOs and civil society organizations are mixed, with examples of effective partnership working, but others where they're just seen as transactional contractual relations. And that's especially when we have implementing partners, and that's often their perception that they have that contractual nature. The other dimension that we found was that there's limited validated evidence of effective models for taking pilots to scale through their promising approaches being implemented in China, though there are some some promising approaches being implemented in China, Philippines, and Indonesia. Next, please. So some key recommendations came out, both for the regional office and country offices. So there's a need to review WASH strategies and areas of focus in line with the global WASH strategies and SDG 6.1 and 6.2. And UNICEF headquarters and the regional office should review the existing monitoring and evaluation framework to ensure it can effectively track system level change and is aligned to SDG 6.1 and 6.2. And these indicators can assess the progress towards safely managed services. The other dimension, which is very important, is that the regional office WASH section, where that Evariste leads, with the support of human resources, should develop a framework of core skills and competencies needed to deliver WASH programs within the region. Often we have human resources that tend to operate on a pilot basis, on project basis, which are used to a lot of downstream. So in middle high income countries, you need a workforce that works much more into systems, into evidence generation, into capacity development of national governments, which already have very strong capacity, like the government of China. The regional office and headquarters should initiate the development of partnerships framework, which outlines a range of partnerships. UNICEF has their characteristics which make them successful and what role UNICEF and its partners are expected to play. This this means that basically you cannot achieve the SDG goals just from a single organization. You need to work in partnerships, and that's valid also for the other SDG goals, as you know. We need to work together, and we need to align. So there was a suggestion in that sense to work across the board and to develop a framework where we share similar goals and objectives. Next, please. The other dimension recommendation is to review and revise the content and the process by which UNICEF Regional Office develops its regional knowledge management strategy and its WASH knowledge management. And it should ensure the regional WASH knowledge management plan is part of an integrated cross-sectoral strategy. This has further advanced since then as the other recommendations. And UNICEF also headquarters and the regional office should purposely support the further development and critical review of scale-up models, which show potential for achieving SDG indicator level service delivery. So this is really important that there's consistency across the board of how country offices apply pilot to scale models. I remember visiting Papua New Guinea, and there were some really some examples of work not being consistently understood across the board, across the different sectors where UNICEF was intervening. So WASH, which is one of the fundamental sectors, really has the strength and the capacity to implement pilot to scale, and needs to do it consistently across the board. The other recommendation that came across, that we need to place an increased level of emphasis on reporting and generating evidence on equity and inclusion. And finally, the regional office should initiate a regional meeting or workshop amongst key development partner WASH actors in the region. And maybe some of you which are participating in the webinar today could be interested in joining such initiative. Next, please. So we presented some of the key lessons from this evaluation at our global evaluation meeting, because this was one of the best evaluations done across UNICEF back in last year. The overall methodology was really utilization focused. It was a non-experimental design. This formative evaluation had even if a light touch reality check on the ground, visiting 3 country offices out of the 12, it did conduct a survey, it did conduct interviews and all, it reviewed all the documents. This was a little bit of a limitation, not being able to visit all the countries, but at least we had a representative sample, and then we managed to get all the secondary data on all the other country offices. Next, please. There's some very important innovations in this evaluation. Instead of using a theory of change, we use a theory of action. And this allowed also to look into the performance of the regional office and how it could contribute to the SDG level. And findings were further validated by senior management with a presentation on a regional management team with all the representatives of the country offices. We did that together with Evariste last year in Myanmar. And this also fed, most importantly, in our strategic plan, into UNICEF's global strategic plan, where WASH is one of the 5 core pillars. Some lessons learned, as for any other strategic learning-oriented evaluation, this can contribute to transformational change, but to do so, you need to be very clear in your intent. You need to budget for sufficient resources. We managed to do this with, so to say, a light budget as compared to what such evaluation could entail. Seniors management buy-in from the beginning is critical. And you need to identify new ways to disseminate findings. You've seen on the web link that is shared for this session a video, which shows you how we've opted to further disseminate the findings also to a broader audience. The funny thing is that our regional director tweeted this video. And I think it got like 1 million views or so and likes on Twitter. Next, please. Thank you. So are there questions? Ada, are you moderating the questions?
Yes,
or?
yes, thank you very much. Sorry, I was trying to copy the questions that were in the chat, and I have the chat near me with me. So we have 3 questions, Riccardo.
Yes.
One is from Pacosa Graja. The question says, how to ideally measure efficiency and effectiveness when projects are still in progress, especially for government projects that sometimes have lags in terms of payment. So let me, do you want to go one by one, or do you want me to go to the next question?
Maybe what I could do, as it's really early in the morning, maybe I could go one by one.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you.
We have 4 already.
Okay, and how much time do we have?
We still have time, but try to, if you can take 3 minutes per question would be good.
Okay, so fundamentally, when you look at efficiency and effectiveness, normally in real world evaluation, projects, programs, strategies are always ongoing. You generally do not look backwards, especially when the evaluations are formative and forward-looking. Therefore, you need to try to understand where was the intervention most effective, and what were efficient, and what were the contributing factors. So, for instance, on effectiveness, you could look around timeliness. You could look on efficiency. You could look at cost. And what are the contributing factors to this? Where is it performing better and where it's not? This often will call for qualitative also dimensions, because you don't always have, when the intervention is ongoing, baseline, midlines, and endlines that allow you to measure all the evolution of the efficiency and the effectiveness of the intervention as such. And the next question is?
Yes. No, the second part of the question was if you have any reflections that you would like to share on of governments on formative evaluations.
Oh, well, yes, certainly. Reflections of governments of formative evaluations. First of all, I think that governments' evaluation culture varies across East Asia and the Pacific. We have advanced evaluation cultures with governments that monitor and evaluate their policies, their strategies, their public expenditure, their core areas of intervention, and allocate budgets according to the results of these evaluations. Well, we have other governments that are less familiar, do not have national policies, national evaluation policies or systems that are in place. That means that still, and that's especially in low-income countries or also in fragile states in the region, those are mainly doing evaluations with development partners.
Okay, thanks very much, Riccardo. There is one question that has two parts. It says, wondering if you can highlight some examples of evaluation-informed decisions in countries, particularly to bring system-level changes, and if you can also share further about theory of action.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so those are two separate questions, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
By this compare.
Okay, so system level change. I think a number of evaluations in East Asia and the Pacific that UNICEF conducted influenced system level change. It is very important to define what we consider system level change. If we talk about the system can be considered at different levels. They can be considered all the SDGs, can be considered a transformational change, can be considered if we look at the OECD DAC, also system-wide evaluations as a whole of a system response to a certain country or a certain disaster within the country. The most transformative evaluation, and which had a larger system effect and led to the humanitarian reform within the UN, is an evaluation that I led back in 2010, which was on the Pakistan floods, that had a huge contribution on seeing how the UN was stretched to the limit in responding to large-scale emergencies. This was an emergency that affected 20 million inhabitants in Pakistan, so a tenth of the population, which was flooded. And the UN had to reform on a number of aspects in terms of leadership and capacity to deliver. This led to a system-wide change within the UN. But if we look at governments' system-wide change, I do think those tend to take also time, and there needs to be, I haven't seen an evaluation systemically changing how a government operates in the region, maybe with one exception, which is an evaluation we conducted some years ago in North Korea, which really showed, and I think demystified, what evaluation is. We also used a formative approach, and that meant that the government did not consider evaluation as a threat. It was something that allowed us to understand what was happening, and it was explained to the government partners. This meant that with an engagement with one of the government ministries during the first evaluation we did, little by little, by demystifying evaluation, and this was a systemic change, I think, in that context, more and more partners from different line ministries engaged in future evaluations, and little by little, an evaluation culture emerged. And when we managed to do an evaluation in that context, what I said within our organization, and I think that was also another effect of that evaluation, another systemic change, it was much more related to, if you can do an evaluation within that context, where there are limitations in terms of access of data, et cetera, you can do it anywhere across the board and in an organization which has presence in 180 countries. The other question is on, I believe, the theory of action, right?
Yes.
Is there anything specific on the theory of action that is being asked, or it's just a general question?
It's just a general question, and probably you can also ask generally. We will have a second slot for questions and answers. So.
Okay. Okay. So basically, there was what we looked at in terms of the theory of action. This was how do you actually implement? You know, normally you have theories of change that are always developed at the planning stage. Here, in this context of this evaluation, we had a global strategy. And we had a number of country programs that implemented the new country programs, implemented to different degrees this global strategy. So instead of reconstructing a theory of change, the team opted to use a theory of action to look into the strategies, the actions, the impact, and also articulate the different degrees. And this would also serve in the future on how to orient other country programs that were about to develop their country program strategies as such.
Thanks very much, Riccardo. There are three questions left. So for the sake of time, let me group them in two, the two first. What are the challenges faced in this process? And what timelines were given to the project in mending the gaps that were noticed?
Can you repeat that last one, which says mending the gaps that were noticed? That means on the recommendation, are we referring to?
I guess it's the findings and the recommendations of the evaluation, because that's the only way that the question is.
Okay. Okay.
Eda, so, probably in the second slot, you will have an opportunity to unfold your question in case Riccardo doesn't cover it in the way you are expecting to be covered. Thank you.
Thank you. So basically, one of the core challenges that we focused on this, well, we had a multiplicity of challenges on this evaluation. We dedicated, first of all, a lot of time to scope properly and finalize the TOR with Evariste's predecessor, which was Chander, and that took some time. So getting the TOR right was an initial challenge where we invested a lot of time, but then I think it had a high return because there was a lot of clarity in the intent as such. The other dimension is that internally we had our regional WASH advisor that changed over time. And Evariste and Chander had two different perspectives also on the evaluation. The great thing was that Evariste took the evaluation under his belt and was a real evaluation champion, and we managed to plug and play throughout. But this was a challenge in terms of transitioning because there were two visions, and then also Evariste was also new to the region, but he took it as an opportunity also to see and have an evaluation which would help him define the future strategy. But most importantly, one of the challenges we faced was that this evaluation, and this was the real first time I experienced such a challenge, not in terms of the program management transition, but in terms of the team leaders. We had 3 team leaders on this evaluation, and this was not due by design in any sense. What we experienced was first, the team leader that won the bid finally opted out and joined another company. The second team leader that replaced after 1 month was doing 2 evaluations at the same time, one with the World Bank and the other one with us, and finally was sick. And then finally the director of the evaluation company joined and managed to put this through. This had an effect in terms of the timeliness of the evaluation. We originally anticipated this evaluation to be done within a period, and that's how you saw that additional year added to the evaluation. So the evaluation, all in all, ran over 18 months when it was originally planned for 12. We managed, though, to anchor its utilization in a number of core spots despite these delays. The first one was the regional management team, and the other one was feeding into the midterm review of our overall strategic plan. So we anchored it, and Evariste will tell you more about this, into the new CPD developments of the country programs that were in action, but also in the revision of the strategic plan. The other dimension on the recommendations to address these issues, all these issues, all recommendations in UNICEF go into an evaluation management response, which is over a 2-year period and is monitored by the regional director and obviously the regional advisor of WASH. Now, there are different levels of implantation, as you've seen, and there are different pitches in the recommendation. There are both country offices, and there's the regional office and their headquarters. The good thing is that we've shared this evaluation across the board within UNICEF. We've done lessons learned around it. We've shared it in terms of knowledge management. It has been widely disseminated. And Evariste will tell you how country offices and the regional offices have taken this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Riccardo. May I take advantage of an abuse of my role to ask a related question to that? You focus more on the managerial aspects that I think are very important and very useful to share. I wonder whether you faced some challenges in terms of comparing the data and the evidence that emerged from the different countries in highlighting trends, in agreeing with the countries on the findings and the recommendations, whether there has been some co-creation of recommendations, for example, to ensure ownership. Can you refer to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Ada, for the follow-up question. So yes, we did. We definitely worked. We had a regional workshop where all the country offices were present. This was in parallel to another meeting that our WASH colleagues were hosting. So we had all country offices that were present, and we flew in the team leader of the evaluation, which had presented and submitted a draft evaluation report and fleshed out the emerging findings and the emerging recommendations. These were then all commented and validated, prioritized, but more importantly, I think, were sharpened by the different country office colleagues. This meant that they actively contributed to define what would go into the report, because they were responsible then to implement these recommendations to a large extent. So progressively, ownership was built through this process, an active engagement, which was not just by giving feedback or comments on the report, but they actually worked out what were the recommendations to take forward, which ones were the most strategic ones, which were the ones that were most operational, which were the ones that had to be addressed immediately, those on the midterm, on the long term, and more importantly, which were the core issues that were missing in the report, and those that had to be further fundamented or where evidence was lacking. So this was a critical dimension, because again, this was a relatively light touch evaluation in terms of the depth of the field phase, because there were just 3 country offices visited out of the 12. It was a representative sample, but the fact of having 12 country offices present inside a workshop in a room to see whether these recommendations these conclusions and findings made sense was critical. And most importantly, it was important to have all the people in the room to crystallize what needed to be taken forward for the organization in the future years. Yes, that's it.
Really interesting, and I think that's a key part of ensuring that ownership and use of the evaluation at the same time. Thanks very much, Riccardo. The last question of this slot, this part, I'm coming from the school of thought of the entire project development cycle. How are the results of these studies feedback recipient governments, organizations to strengthen their project development capabilities?
So strengthening development capabilities of the government, basically on how does this evaluation strengthen directly the government capabilities, or how does it feed back into the follow-up? Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
It's very early morning here and I'm quite sleepy, so let me have a cup of tea.
The question has been posed by Ray Chang. Ray says, I am coming from the school of thought of the entire project development cycle.
Yes.
How are the results of these studies feedback recipient or government organizations to strengthen their project development capabilities? What I understand is how the results were used to feedback the governments participating in this evaluation to strengthen their project development capabilities.
Okay, thank you for the question, for clarifying this question. The element that we use in UNICEF, as mentioned, is a pilot to scale approach. That's one dimension. So how did we engage in the future? We engage based on the findings to develop our new program strategy notes, which are a core component of the country program document. This is done in partnership with the national government, both at subnational level and at national level. The engagement of partners across the results-based management cycle is done throughout. It's done in the planning phase, in the implementation phase, in the monitoring phase, but also in the active participation in the evaluation. This evaluation, again, is at the strategy level. How does this then translate into a lower unit of intervention, which is the project level? It does it through country program interventions, where there's a multiplicity of projects which form the country program component on water and sanitation. So in all these projects which form the program, we work with the government side by side in a results-based management cycle. The capacities are developed at different levels. Sometimes we have trainings, sometimes we have workshops, sometimes we have, but it is a co-creation. Therefore, the active engagement of the government in the process, I think, is the core dimension of the capacity development. And then there are a number of workshops that Evariste can detail more, where the government also is, the capacities are developed. We have some initiatives, if I remember well, together with national governments of the region in Singapore, but Evariste can talk to that much better.
Thanks very much, Riccardo. There is a question that says whether we will be sharing the PowerPoint. Yes, I guess all the PowerPoints will be readily available at the conference, at the Asian Evaluation Week website. So this was a very good interaction. There were lots of questions, And thanks very much for your thorough responses, Riccardo. It's time to move now to Evariste's Kouassi presentation. As I mentioned before, Evariste is the regional WASH advisors for the East Asia and the Pacific Regional Office of UNICEF. Evariste, over to you, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ada, and also thank Riccardo for the very good introduction for this evaluation, also on the process, which was very well developed as well. This section basically is more how the evaluation that has been conducted been totally used in our program. It's one of the areas which is very important for this evaluation, for this formative evaluation. And I was very grateful for my predecessor who started the whole discussion, and then I've completed the whole process later on, which was very, very instrumental. Some of the key lessons that we have learned through the whole evaluation is, Riccardo talked about it, but I would like to repeat, it's more how collectively as a WASH community and evaluation community in the regional office here we sit together, although the evaluation office is totally separate and more or less independent, as I say, to support the WASH that UNICEF program does in the field. So the collective engagement was very important to bring all the WASH colleagues together. And then the second one is the evaluation team, also very supportive. And also we are very, it was very helpful to see how receptive some of the country office were in terms of, having some case studies developed in China and other countries, 3 other countries to support this evaluation process. It was very, very useful to dig into some of the specific area where we foresee areas, some gap that need to be addressed, things like pilot to scale that being documented in those countries. And then, Riccardo talked also about the whole dissemination phase of this evaluation, which was very instrumental. Some of the posters, webinars, internal discussion, as well as some flyers and the nice video that you see as well are very important for that. Some of the presentations during our internal evaluation and also WASH meeting were quite relevant, to put this evaluation on the board internally, also to other partners as well. So next slide. I think the next slide is how this evaluation has been basically take off after that, after the finding, conclusion, and recommendation. How do we basically operationalize these recommendations are key for us. I think the focus, why this evaluation and how it can be used. And first of all, as you all know, any evaluation will end up to have what you call the management response. And in the office, we have developed based on the 8 main recommendations that have been, that has been developed by the evaluation. We have a big major task that, collectively we work on with our colleagues in the countries and some in the regional office to have 10 big tasks with clear role and responsibility. And then the second point I just want to plug in that is not only the task assigned to only WASH colleagues, but also some tasks attached, with the responsibility with other divisions like HR. One of the recommendations was related to how the WASH community need to be more agile, right, to deal with the new area of work, emerging area of work, and how we can move, from the traditional way of thinking and doing business to more, progressive, upstream looking. So those things need not only WASH intervention, but more other sector looking as well, and more the organization as well involvement. Because one of the key questions is that if you are hiring engineer, the engineer will not do the work for you when we are thinking about the enabling environment. It need a new thinking in this area on enabling environment, financing, policy discussion. because this region is very particular compared to other regions where most of the government were able to fund their water and sanitation infrastructure, whereas in other regions it's quite challenging now. So how do we move our work to make, to support the government and then, help them develop better capacity to leverage their additional resources for the sector is very fundamental. So the new HR thinking need to come in, the new what you call monitoring and evaluation need to come in, and it's very fundamental for that. And those recommendations are not only for WASH, it can be applicable to some other sector like nutrition, health as well, when the systematic way of thinking need to come in. It's why this evaluation as a pioneer for this SDG time is the first time that we are doing this evaluation in WASH to see how we are responding to the SDG and then the WASH global strategy, which is very important. And the pioneership of this evaluation was very good, but it challenged some of the organization, organization structure in the way that, the traditional way of doing water and sanitation program need to be changed in this region in particular. Next slide. And then the second one I just want to show, and then related to some of the questions that some participants asked before in terms of system. I think it's good. In our global strategy, there's some of the definition of some programming modality that we need to see, and this evaluation assess that, which is a very good thing for us, and to see how we can better help those countries in the region to address some of the programming modality, like how we strengthen the enabling environment, for example, and how we address some of evidence to promote child rights in the region, leverage financing resources for sustaining services, and also build some sustainable model, and how do you empower community and also deliver service and supply. And then you can see, based on the survey and discussion that this evaluation has been, each of the country office, we come up with this sort of dashboard showing some of the country with some scoring, which is very relevant for someone at the regional office to basically sit and see, okay, what is going on well in some of the country, what are the challenges that we are facing. And this evaluation has helped basically to categorize the way that the regional office will be supporting the country, basically based on this dashboard, and how the programming modality can make a change in some of the countries. And you can see well that some of the countries like Cambodia, or you go to Vietnam, for example, or Laos, although they have a very good system strengthening enabling environment system, there's still some challenging in terms of how do you deliver service and supply. For example, in Cambodia, or in Papua New Guinea, where things are not totally green, but also there's a lot of challenge in terms of some of the bottlenecks remain there in terms of how do you have a good policy to address private sector engagement, or how do you make sure that you can leverage government funding. For example, in Papua New Guinea, based on this evaluation, we are working on investment case, for example, in Vietnam and Papua New Guinea for WASH specific. So those are some of the areas that we do think that this evaluation was very useful, because it creates a new avenue to work on some specific area where there's a need, a lot of improvement to be made. The next slide. In addition to that, this evaluation is it's coming at the right time. And if you see this slide, you see that most of the country will go to the next cycle very soon in 2021, right? It will go to the board this year for the approval, for the 2021 approval, which is very fundamental, because it will basically help to better shape the country program for the next cycle. One good thing is that Riccardo mentioned using the whole theory of action was very fundamental to see how, based on the country situation analysis, some of the recommendations can be infused, and then to help the country review their national strategy or strategy note, that we call it, and that will link basically to the country program development. And this is a country development program that needs to be approved by the board. So it is timely, and then it will be basically helping to basically improve some of the area of our programming in the country level. Knowing that some of the key instruments are quite fundamental on the way that we are working. The first one is our global strategy that has been developed for 2016-2030, still valid today. And then, linked to that is our strategic plan and also the SDGs, which are fundamental. Those are the trickle effect, basically they link each other. And then the theory of action that has been used in this evaluation show the whole pathway of all those instruments where there's a linkage we build at different level to the next level document. And then based on that, a clear monitoring system can be developed. And then perfectly, one of the recommendations of this evaluation was linking to that, the whole monitoring aspect, how the SDG indicator can be trickled down to the strategy note at the country level, and also support the government to have a good indicator that will be linked to each other. I think it was very fundamental, basically, to address those components of the planning. The next slide. The next slide is what, based on the management response and how we use this basically to help the country program and the country. We don't think that at the regional level, there's a need to have a refresh regional WASH strategy 2021-2022. It's one of the recommendations also of this evaluation. And in the evaluation, some of the challenges, are outlined very clearly. One of the recommendations is that UNICEF used to call everything partnership, right? You are having partnership with ADB, a partnership with civil society, a partnership with the financing institution. Is there a way that we can categorize what is partnership? This is one of the recommendations, and I think this is one of the valid questions that the evaluation, asks for, and then that we need to work on and build on the new WASH strategy document to classify those and see what are the relevance we are putting on that. And then in this strategy, we will talk about some of the issues like the whole WASH staff agility in terms of response to the new challenge, and also how we can improve the way that we develop the real-time monitoring and addressing some of what we call emerging issues like climate change, like gender, or those we are there for a long time, and then we are working on that. And now the COVID-19 is coming in this situation. In addition to that, we are working with evaluation team in the regional office to have additional survey, basically, that will measure the whole COVID-19 impact on water and sanitation services in the region, which is quite fundamental as we want to build the strategy that is more comprehensive, taking into account the evaluation and also the new challenge that the water and sanitation sector is facing as well. So the next slide. The next slide is, what are the key things that make this formative evaluation very successful? I think the theory of action was fundamental because it shows us the linkage between the SDGs and then the new strategy that will be developed some time ago, 2016, sorry, and also the EAPRO operation in middle-income country, because some of the things that come in most often is how do you intervene in a middle-income country and how do you count the number? Most of you know that UNICEF depends more on the donation, right? And then many people who are donating are looking for the number that you are achieving. And this highlights in this area how you work in a different setup. Instead of counting the number, but how do you move more on indirect result, which is more related to system strengthening? I think it's one of the questions that is coming more often in the evaluation as well. And then the next one is more, what are the innovative financing discussions related to water and sanitation in the country? And then the last one is the engagement of the staff for both evaluation country office are quite successful. Next slide. So I think it was very good to reflect that again. Our evaluation college in the regional office was very instrumental to push forward, and also the collective support we have from our WASH college in each of the country was very powerful. And you know, I just want to thank also all those people who contribute for the peer review of this evaluation, and also for my predecessor who started the way. But I think this was very good evaluation that paved our way for the next strategy, and also to do things better in the year to come. Thank you very much, Ada. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Evariste. You did a great explanation, and I think everybody has benefited from this. You both, you and Riccardo, have highlighted a very, very complex evaluation and a strategy evaluation that involves several layers, I would say, because it was aimed at informing a new strategy, but at the same time at informing the country's strategies at the UNICEF level, at the country office level. It also sought to have good levels of ownership and participation, and it also has some innovative aspects. For example, instead of a theory of change, there was a theory of action, and there are many, many aspects that are really, really add to the complexity of this evaluation, but still it was possible to be done in a relatively short, not so short, but relatively short time frame, with very good results and with very good influence. I would highlight that the evaluation not only was used, but the evaluation was not only operationally used, but was very, very influential. So congratulations, thank you very much. We'll have the second round of questions, so the floor is open for questions, comments. Well, there is a comment here. Thanks, really interesting. Thanks for sharing the WASH results. And the comment is from UNICEF Vanuatu. And yes, there are no comments by the moment. I would like to take advantage of this opportunity. Okay. Okay, there is a question here. In terms of regional WASH strategy, what was the difference from this region vis-a-vis other regions? Probably, Evariste, based on your knowledge of WASH in UNICEF, you can highlight broadly these differences, because this goes far beyond the scope of the evaluation. Over to you. Thank you.
No, thanks very much for the person who asked the question. Like I say, in my presentation, this region is very particular, where most of the country are able to finance or to fund their water and sanitation services, which is totally different to other regions. If you consider, South Asia or Africa, for example, this region has this particular thing where most of investment are coming from the country budget itself. And then the major, difference is the work on upstream level. So on the system level, which is very important. And you can see that in this evaluation, the most important thing we see is the pilot to scale approach that has been used. Basically need to be more documented and reflect how we do things differently. So four main areas of the way that this regional strategy will differ from other. One, which is very particular, is how do you aggregate the sustainability area, linking water, sanitation, and climate resilience component together and making sure that there's a pilot to scale developed to make sure that all the countries use the same avenue. I think this is one of the areas which is for this regional strategy be very important. The second one, which is fundamental, is how the regional partnership that Riccardo talked about will basically help most of the country to be more agile and new thinking and innovation. So this is one area which is fundamental, bringing all the regional institutions as well as some of the country where you have a huge development factor to support the country implementation or the country financing or the country enabling environment factor might be very important for the strategy, regional strategy, because it's where there's a role to play basically in this region. And then the last one, which is also very important, is how do we link some of the emerging area like hand hygiene and to the ongoing initiative in some of the country to make them more government-owned approach, not country-specific implementation area. And then the last one, which is very powerful, is the real-time monitoring and evaluation. I think the real-time monitoring and evaluation, I talk about it, is fundamental. Most of the region are not doing that, but it's the area that we need to excel. We have been good in doing evaluation on paper for many years. This is one of the region powerful on that. But the next one is what the real-time evaluation in water and sanitation sector will look like. We are very, very disappointed with, with a COVID-19 response where the whole sector was not able basically to provide the real-time data for decision making. I think we will be moving more on, using 4-year back data to have a good monitoring. We need to have a real-time monitoring, which is one of the area that the whole WASH strategy in the region will be moving toward as well. Over to you, Ada.
Thanks very much. Person, it says, sorry. One second, that there is a comment. It says, in a world which needs cooperation, SDG 17, which is partnerships, how do you think this regional evaluation can help other regions and vice versa?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's totally linked to the pillar number 3 of the strategy that we are thinking about as well. This pillar number 3 is more a regional partnership and then social cooperation. This region has been very innovative in terms of developing sanitation products over the past years, water products over the past year. I think the next move is to bring this region to the next level, having climate smart technology to be developed and have some of catalog and instrument or system that can be made available to other regions particularly. This is one of the areas that we need to think about, because SDG 17, which is cooperation, need to basically match with some specific thematic area. And water and sanitation and hygiene is one of the areas where it might be very easy to show that technology and system that you are developing can be used by other regions very well, and then also make sure that you use those instruments to promote or reach the last mile in many countries. So I think it's fundamental that we can use this the innovation in East Asia Pacific basically to help other countries to innovate, also to have a new technology that can help them to reach the last mile.
There is one more question, Evariste, that says, thank you for the comprehensive presentation. Do you think culture plays an important role in the success or lack thereof of the WASH strategy in the East Asia and the Pacific?
Yeah, this is, do you think culture play important role in the success? I think it's, yeah, okay. The diversity, the diversity of this region, make me think that, culture can be an enabler or a bottleneck as well. Okay, I was in Vanuatu end of December, and Emily was is on the call. And one of the things that she was keeping telling me is that you need to tell those people to wash their hands. This is November before COVID-19 came into play. And she was telling me that, and that tell them, and then when I start washing hands in front of everybody, everybody start laughing, which was great. This is Vanuatu. And you go to Indonesia and you see all those schools, they have a taps in the school and no one washes hands actually rare in some of the schools. And then some of the studies show that basically, which is very important. So I think one of the things that we foresee that the discipline in some of the country was very useful to build the strategy on, and which is some of the culture we have seen and then seen so far in some of the countries like Vietnam, Thailand, or Laos, where those countries, have a very positive effect and can change the whole situation in some of the countries. But in some of the countries, there's need to have more education, more information to get those people at the same level that other countries are. So the diversity of the country in the region can be, enabler, also can be also some of the bottleneck, and those are the things that the strategy need to address, and how we resolve that in different ways.
There is a question from Mr. Riccardo Polastro. I'm sure you know him. It says, to influence strategic direction through evaluation, what will you replicate from this experience and what would you do differently? And I would suggest that you respond first, Evariste, but then we give the floor to Riccardo to give him also the opportunity to respond. What would he replicate and what would he be doing differently? Over to you.
Not. Thank. This is a very good question. It's like when you are doing the interview for a job, they ask you the same question. What you would like to do differently, and then what you want to replicate. I think this evaluation has shown how the collective engagement of all the wash sector play a huge role in coming to some of the findings and recommendations. I was very happy during the interaction that all the wash community had with the evaluation company in a meeting in Bangkok, when some of the wash chiefs say it was totally engaged some of the recommendation, voicing again that it's not me, it's not the regional advisor, it's my colleagues. So this show this whole appropriateness and ownership of the evaluation by the whole team, not me, which is one of the things that we found very interesting. This collaboration and then this support from the country office was something that I will basically duplicate. And then the second thing that I think that need to be duplicated in the introduction of the theory of action, right? And this theory of action was very powerful, that it shows you the pathway from the strategic note, where you need to put in the strategic note and how this is related to the SDG 6. So it gives you the pathway that if you are not getting right in your strategy note, don't expect getting something out there in the SDG 6. So this was very fundamental. It's innovative, but it gives you a pathway basically to get there. And then, usually I say two things are good. I don't say three, but today I'll say three things. The third point, which was very important, is that, the power of the evaluation team was very, very fundamental, because the independence is there, because sometimes I was trying to influence the evaluation, but also the independent character or characteristic of our evaluation team, help to put the ball down, say, okay, this is the evaluation is not UNICEF work. So those are the things which are totally fundamental, the mix between, the balance between evaluation and then the wash the WASH programmatic works were quite, very, very useful. And if I want to replicate, I will do the same thing again. I think it was very, very, very good. And then they will ask you why you would like not to do again, right? And maybe Riccardo know my, answer for a long time for this evaluation. I do think that, having a team in the beginning that committed to do the evaluation along the pathway might be might be the best thing to do. Changing some of the team in the middle of the road were quite challenging sometimes. You need a lot of discussion to bring them back on the same logic that has been defined before. So I think it was very good to have this evaluation. And the good thing is that it helped develop the strategy, and we have hired a consultant now, working on the strategy. And we hope by December, the regional strategy will be available.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Evariste. That was very clear and to the point. Now, as I mentioned before, I think it will be fair to give the same opportunity to Riccardo to ask what he thinks can be replicated and what can be done differently. Over to you, Riccardo. Thank you.
Thank you, Ada, and thank you, Evariste. I did not mean to pose this question to answer it, but evaluators often ask many questions, and there you go. So I think I agree on the first point that Evariste raises, which is the ownership dimension. I think for any evaluation to inform strategies or inform the future, so to say, it is critical to have ownership of key stakeholders, and not only of those being evaluated, which is the WASH sector. The other critical dimension, I think, in this evaluation was senior management. So senior management was critical to get their buy-in, both at the country office level, but also at the regional office level. But not only that, I think the other dimension in terms of ownership where I felt there was a huge traction, we had a lot of ownership from HQ on this evaluation, which often are, as Ada was pointing out, 3 different levels that often do not have a full alignment. There can be disconnects at these different levels. We're an organization of 13,000 people, to give you a sense of breadth and scope. So it's a really big organization. But I think the ownership, the interaction, the communication, and also the way of working shoulder to shoulder on this evaluation with our WASH colleagues together. I know Evariste often was saying, okay, let's push the boundaries more. This is not good enough. Let's ask them more. And I was saying, hey, wait a second. This is good enough. And I think this flies because, as you say, the perfect is the enemy of the good. So you need also to, within a time frame and a budget, you need to be able to deliver. So this is something that the other element that I would replicate is the dissemination. So one hand is building the ownership from the start, throughout, from the TOR down to the final stages of the evaluation, the validation, the conclusions, and the other is the dissemination. So reaching out to a broader audience. That little video that you have on the website, all the participants that are online, have a look at it. It's quite amazing. We had all sorts of feedbacks on this video, and some people were saying in knowledge management colleagues, they were saying, hey, it's fantastic. I don't need to read a 50-page report now. It's all contained in a 3-minute video. So reaching out to broader audiences, which are not the usual suspects in an evaluation. I think that is something, if one identifies the key stakeholders from the start and manages to craft some messages, an evaluation brief, an evaluation video, is really critical to reach out. What I would do differently, though, I think, you know, the workshop we did in Bangkok with our WASH colleagues, I think was great. I would love to do a workshop if we have a recommendation on partnerships with all the partners, with all, because we all share in WASH, all the development actors share quite a common framework around the SDGs. So an evaluation of this importance, I think merits having in the room the core partners of UNICEF on identifying how to take forward these actions and these recommendations together. That's where I think I would do this differently. And the other dimension I would do differently, instead of 3 countries, if budget allows for it and times allow for it, I would do a little bit more to have more validity. I would try, but this goes beyond our capacity to do or not do, or to control or not control. I would try not to have so many changes in the team, because that, as Evariste was pointing out, is very difficult to manage, to keep on track, and to get, you know, the quality that you do expect. With you have to sometimes start, I wouldn't say back from the starting line, but you have to backtrack a little bit, and before a person gets fully on board, it does take time. So to the extent possible, I would try to keep the same team. Over to you. You're on mute, Ada.
Yes, thanks very much, Riccardo. I think everything was good, interesting, until you said that you will try to keep the same team. And how would you manage to do that? Perhaps negotiating with the firm that there has to be backup for the session, for the team leader, and therefore there is no the learning curve can be probably reduced. But I think that's a problem that many evaluations face. There is, I think we will take the last question. This is a very interesting conversation on the theory of action being a delivery model of the theory of change. From our years of evaluation experience, the implementing agencies, recipient economies, have prior international institutional capabilities and knowledge base about the theory of action. Basically, I think whether the theory of action was a concept that was already known or was easily internalized by the key players in this evaluation, mainly recipients, according to the person that has posed the question. And that will be the very last question. Who would like to respond to that, Riccardo or Evariste?
Evariste, over to you. I'll conclude.
I think Evariste. Okay,
yeah, no,
Evariste.
yeah, okay, yeah. So, the theory of action was first introduced in this evaluation, as I can see, and then coming from the evaluation team. But again, it takes us a lot of work and discussion to reframe it, to make it more sound, linked to this evaluation that we are working on, which was fundamental, and a lot of iteration, a lot of review, a lot of, readjustment, and then we could, based on some of the things that having developing the pathway together from how our program flow has helped the theory of action to be something live. So it's more on a collaboration between the two teams. They introduced the idea, but putting some of the parameters in the theory of action had been something that we work collectively in to come to the conclusion. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks very, very much. I guess we have a few minutes left, and before I think Riccardo wants to close, but before taking advantage that we have 6 minutes and I don't think there are more questions, I would like to propose that before you do your closing remarks, Riccardo, whether both of you can share with the audience a key message. If there was a key message that you would like to share with the audience at this point, what would that message be? Can we start by Evariste, please?
Yeah, no, usually 2 key messages, you know. One is, you know, before starting evaluation, we should basically agree on what basically you want to get out of the evaluation and how you use it. The use is more important because you have seen for many years, some of the evaluation has been conducted, but not really used. I think the use might be something that you need to discuss. If not, you'll be wasting your money to do those kind of evaluation. And then the second element, which is very important, is that now most of the program has been more intersectorial, right? Bringing more unit, more area together. I do think that even, you know, working on the theme of referential evaluation, defining what you want to do, you need to involve other sector as well in the whole, you know, discussion before starting the whole process of evaluation. Those are my 2 key messages for that. Over.
Excellent, Evariste. Riccardo, your key message to the audience, and then you can conclude, please. Over to you.
So I concur on this. You know, in every evaluation to be utilization focused, you need to be clear in the intent, and you need to know also the key users. That's not my key message. Actually, that's Michael Quinn Patton who puts utilization focus at the core. But what is most important on this evaluation, more specific, beyond the clarity of the intent, is the process. Processes in evaluation to make useful evaluation can be adjusted. They can be tailored. You need to think out of the box to get all the different stakeholders on board, even within a given frame. And in this sense, even if you do face challenges and adversities, if you want to make an evaluation useful, you never should give up. You should really have this in mind. Evaluations are transformative, and they can influence strategic direction. And it's not for you as an evaluator to say that. It's for people involved in core programmatic activities as Evariste to see the value of evaluation. Our role is not to preach against the converted or with the converted. It is to engage different stakeholders, a broader net of stakeholders that see the value of evaluation and its capacity to influence strategic direction.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much, colleagues. I hope that after this session, everybody will be a bit more motivated, not only to undertake, but also to ensure the usefulness of the evaluations that we conduct. It has been a very interesting session, very comprehensive, of a really complex and strategic evaluation. So our gratitude to Riccardo and Evariste, and sincere congratulations for having carried out this evaluation in such a successful way and for having shared this experience with us in such an interesting and engaging way. Thanks very much to all the 50 plus participants in this session. We thank you very much. And the organizers remind us that for social media, please use hashtag AEW2020. And please answer the survey at the end of this session. It will be very much appreciated to have your feedback. I wish you all a good day, good afternoon. The link for the survey is already there, and the report of the evaluation is available, and the link is there. The link to the survey will pop up soon. And I wish you, on behalf of UNICEF, I wish you a very good day, afternoon, evening, or a very good night for those that are in the same part of the world that I am. Stay safe, and thank you very much. Bye-bye.